when you then become CEO, you have to live in the future, and that's the difference between the two roles. It didn't bother me that I had to take a few steps back to then come forward again.
That's important.
It is. That anything's possible in life. I had every reason to give up.
Doors closing. Welcome to the 13th floor. Stuck in a Lift HQ.
Andrew, Andy, and I've learned all your nicknames today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me on Stuck in a Lift.
It's a pleasure, Alice. It's a pleasure.
I've got to say to start.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I've got to say to start that my arms used to be as big as yours back when I used to like the gym. I know that you wouldn't ever believe it, but
I do. Yeah, muscle memory. You're getting back. You're getting back.
So I just wanted to join you for a chat this morning because we are talking everything manufacturing, distribution for the lift industry.
Yeah.
So I thought you was the perfect candidate to sit in that chair and have a chat with me.
Yeah, I shall hopefully lift the lid on a few things.
So PEW, who are they and what do they do?
Okay, so a lot of people will know us as PEW, but the company's now we started in 1988, so it's in its 36th year. 37 next time round, if my maths is correct. So back in the early days, when we were looking for somewhere to establish a business, I walked the course. So I walked from Barking to Mile End and Whitechapel back to Custom House, looking for somewhere to potentially have a shop. And there was an old company called Moss Electrical that is still prominent now in Watford. It restarted, not in Watford, in Dartford. And they were in Barking Road but had since moved. So I thought that would be a good place to start because obviously people were used to getting their electrical goods from Barking Road. So we didn't start in the lift industry. We started as an electrical distributor, an electrical wholesaler of just sort of products that an electrical contractor would buy, like fluorescent fittings, double sockets, stuff that you have your house wired up with.
Yeah.
So we began our life as Plasto electrical wholesalers, because we were in Plasto. Yeah. And over the years, that's where the name PEW came from, an acronym of that, because we're no longer in Plasto. But those will always be the fond years because we were in Plasto from 88 to 2003. And we've since been embarking from 2003 to wherever we are now, 24. So that people still regard this premises as our new premises, but we've already been here 21 years. So PEW now are still an electrical supplier, but an electrical supplier with an angle. And that angle is that we direct our focus to the lift industry. So 90% of all of our products are specialised really towards supplying towards the lift and escalator industry to customers like Otis, Connie, Schindler, Stanner, and many independent lift companies, which I think there's about 800 in the UK. Small, large and medium independent lift companies. So that's our game now. So PEW, whilst it stood for Plasto Electrical Wholesalers, is now hopefully one of the leading suppliers to the lift and escalator industry for lift specific products. So that's been a bit of a journey getting there.
I can imagine. And you've got some photos that you can share with us, right,
yes,
of that journey. Can you grab them for me?
So here you can see this was our first premises when we were known as Plasto Electrical Wholesalers. And this is, in fact, the opening day.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, with a young me, a young wife, my parents, and some of these pictures which show my first office, which was literally a piece of board on top of some cable, and a landline phone, which you don't see too much of these days. Standing behind my proud selection of fluorescent light fittings, which are all now obsolete. Putting up shelving. So the common theme here is that there wasn't many staff. So I had to do everything.
Yeah.
So whether it was putting up shelves, selling to the customer, you learn a lot about yourself and what you can and cannot do. And it's not so much as what you thought you could and couldn't do. You're left with no option. If you're going to run a business,
you have to do it all.
You adapt and evolve almost on a daily basis. One of our first delivery vans, and just literally pictures of the first premises and the second premises, which were literally maybe 200 or 300 yards apart in Barking Road. This one obviously outgrew the space. And this was an old Victorian pub based on 3 levels.
Oh, you can definitely tell by the angle on the corner.
And one of the funny stories from that is that we had an open day for Jackson Lifts there. And when I took them down to the cellar, which was cobbled, I said, well, this is our light department where we kept a lot of our fluorescent light fittings. Many moons later, we had a charity evening, which most of the lift industry sort of come to, which is a floating Chinese restaurant in the Docklands. And one of the Jackson chaps said, oh, you come a long way, Andy. And I said, oh, yeah, thanks. He goes, I remember the, and he said something tour. And I said, I didn't hear that. He said, I shouldn't tell you this, but we had a right old laugh when we left you the corner tour because you took us down to the cellar and we were laughing amongst ourselves that it was the Ripper tour. So I was there proud showing them all of our stuff and they were laughing at me saying it was the Ripper tour. So we've come a long way.
Target Lifts are proud to sponsor the Stuck in a Lift podcast in partnership with Blacks Productions, providing honest and detailed communication to ensure you are supported with your lift requirements. Target Lifts are always aiming higher. How did you get into the lift side of it?
Yeah,
How did you go from
it's a good question.
Yeah,
it's a good question. Again, in the business's younger years, I'll pop this down now. Yeah. We needed to find customers, electrical customers. That was either electrical contractors or other companies that used electrical products, like facilities management companies that had their hand in plumbing, heating, electrical, heating and ventilation. And it was on my visit to one of these, a company that I still remember called CMS, Complete Maintenance Services. By chance, they were positioned next to an old lift company called Associated Lifts. And I obviously accidentally parked in one of the Associated Lifts bigwigs parking spots, and he came out to have a go at me, and he took pity on me and let me park there. And when I left seeing CMS, he asked me to pop in to see whether we could be of service to him. And again, it's an opportunity, one that I never ever envisaged, but was ready to take. And he gave me an opportunity to look at some invoices from one of his suppliers. And I could see that it was littered with electrical products, but also littered with stuff that I'd never heard of before. Obviously, products that were synonymous with the lift industry. So then it was my job to bridge that gap and try to build a portfolio of products that would enable me to service customers like that. And I'm telling you in 30 seconds, but this was probably like a 5-year odyssey to even get to be recognised that we could do some of that. So that's how we first dipped our toes into the lift industry, which was probably 11 years after we started as an electrical wholesaler. So from then on, we realised that it was an opportunity for us to ring fence ourselves from other electrical competitors like your City Electrical Factors and others that we were always competing against for discounts, blah, blah, blah. And one of the philosophies of the electrical industry was that, well, rather than, this invoice is due for payment, the philosophy is, well, you get paid when we get paid, which didn't ever sit well with me. It was different within the lift industry. We found out that we were getting paid straight away. So I think that was one of the reasons why we wanted to migrate to it. But obviously we had to earn that right.
Yeah.
So it was a case then of slowly but surely building our sort of portfolio of lift products. But that came about from searching out people that were prepared to help us to build those. And we've made some very, very good friends along the way that have supported and still support us now, to make sure that we fill all the gaps of products that are required within the lift industry. And so that's how we sort of got a foothold in the lift industry, and we grabbed it with both hands, and here we still are today, some 25 years later. So we've got, it's not, there's lots of companies that have been around longer. So we've been around for 37 years almost, but 25 in the lift industry.
What made you, obviously you started this very young, what made you take that path?
Yeah, good question. Like many youngsters, I was lucky enough to go to university. I studied civil engineering, which essentially is heavily maths and physics based. I've always been able with maths. Not to say that I'm not good on the English side, but I always preferred numbers. Whilst I studied civil engineering, I only studied it on the strength of the A-levels that I took. So when I came out of that, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. A lot of my other friends went on and have had fantastic careers within civil engineering. Yeah. One of the chaps that I studied with is now chairman of the Institution of Civil Engineers. Shows we've all got a bit older. But it wasn't for me. And it took me a long while to sort of perhaps find out what I wanted to do. I found that I was more perhaps outgoing than my friends, like to be around people more. So I thought that I'd try sales.
Okay.
So my first job from university was with KP Foods on one of their graduate trainee programs. As my dad was hugely disappointed that I was going to be a nut salesman, but it was so much more than that. And that was perhaps the beginning of learning the essentials of business, because at KP Foods, they put you through all the different divisions, because there was wholesale, retail, pubs and clubs, canteens at work. It's not just selling to one outlet.
Yeah, of course.
And so I got to deal with all different types of customer, from your guy that's just running the factory shop to perhaps a high up person at Macros in wholesale. So that sort of perhaps developed a taste for dealing in business. My lucky break was that my sister was married to a chap called Gordon Johnson, who still runs an electric wholesalers in Woodford called JPC Electrical, that we're still good buddies with. So I decided he said, look, come and work with me, and in 5 years you'll be established on your own. We'll start a business after a year, and in 5 years you'll be established, which was entirely remotely from the truth, because it takes a lot longer than 5 years to become established. But I did a year with Gordon, working at JPC, just to learn the ropes of electrical wholesaling. And then we found the premises together in Barking Road Plaster that we mentioned earlier. I have to say that I was hugely unsure to begin with, because I didn't know that I had the tools or the skills to be a businessman, because I saw a businessman, the only businessman I knew was Gordon. And I didn't really know what that entailed in terms of the difference between a businessman perhaps and an entrepreneur. So, because Gordon and I are entirely different animals. I've got to get this right. He worked to live. For many years I lived to work, because I wanted to build something special.
Yeah.
So the arrival point was a bit grey in as much as I arrived there, I got a chance, and the one thing that made me want to pursue it and not give up was that I have a morbid fear of failure. I don't like to fail at anything, because I think you always look back and go through the what ifs. What have I done something differently? Could I have? Maybe I could have. Could I? Should I? But I remember watching a Gordon Ramsay programme on cooking, and he was just about to get rid of a particular chap that wasn't up to scratch. And the guy was saying, if I cooked them slightly at a higher temperature, or I'd taken them out of the oven earlier, I think I still would have been in the show. And Gordon Ramsay said, if ifs and buts were cakes and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. And I knew what he meant from that, meaning that ifs and buts, they don't count. It's what you do that counts. Yeah. So I stuck with it, and it's when I look back, it's emotional for me even now, because I was on my own, and I had my parents, perhaps not the most supportive, because I'd given up the chance to work for some good civil engineering companies. Yeah. But I saw it through, and then we started to get a few members of staff. And I think it's not, people say you look at the end game. I didn't know what the end game was. I had no idea what the end game was. I didn't know I was going to become perhaps a leader supplier to the lift industry. I just took it then day by day, just to give my best every day and see what opportunities came my way. And we got further and further down the road of becoming an established electrical wholesaler. Certain things went against us. Difficulties that we turned into advantages. In Barking Road, it was a busy road, which they then put a bus lane down, which meant that people couldn't park outside the business. They then put double yellow lines down it, so people just wouldn't park. So we lost a lot of our passing trade. So with that, we knew that our future wasn't going to be, in a retail shop in Barking Road, which brought us to this industrial warehouse. So sometimes difficulties make the decisions for you. Yep. So in terms of going back to the question that you asked, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Probably a lot of youngsters aren't. And if you ask me today, could I have done something else equally as good? I'd like to think perhaps I could have. Maybe it could have been in corporate banking, or, being a chartered surveyor or whatever. It's just that I got an opportunity from my brother-in-law that for me was gilt-edged, because he'd put trust in me. And I think that if someone puts trust in you or puts faith in you, then you think, well, I must have something. And I didn't want to let him down. So, yeah.
Just took it And went.
Well, yeah, when you say went, it wasn't 100 miles an hour. You know, we used to have a weekly meeting. We called it a business meeting, which was at his kitchen table, which we laughed and cried at. We laughed when we had a good day, but I've still got the original, and if you want to see them, I'll show you. I've got my original notes of my first few days' takings. And let me tell you, they don't make good reading. You know, I think my first day in business, I took 14 pounds. And when we recently had a sort of like a landmark day where we took 100 times in one day what we took in a day back then. And you look back and think, well, had I not stuck with it, we wouldn't have done that.
No.
And this building would still be here, but it could be a stationery company or a logistics company. But that it's PEW is because I stuck with it. So there's a lesson that sometimes things don't go your way. And let me tell you, I've had plenty of days like that when I had every reason to give up, but you just have to keep on keeping on, as they say.
Target Lifts are proud to provide qualified and experienced field staff to ensure all reactive repairs, call-outs and technical visits are completed in a timely fashion. Their management and administration staff are entirely focused on providing a customer service experience that is second to none. Target Lifts can provide expert maintenance on all types of single lift and group installations. They offer a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week emergency call-out service, of which they are committed to ensuring all calls are 100% attended to in the agreed service level agreed times. To find out more, visit targetlifts.limited.co.uk today. What's been your most successful, I mean, you may have just answered that just then, but what's been your most successful moment?
Well, I think for the company, because personally and professionally, I think they're different. Your most successful moment, it's difficult to say whether you've ever had one because I think you always want to create new ones. But for the company, I think that we approached Otis to become their supplier, and they wouldn't look my way for 8 years, and I wrote 3 product guides, and I remember investing. We didn't have a lot of money, and I remember investing heavily in sending them 100 product guides to a chap called Simon Hunter that still works there. And I think they used them to prop up their desks or whatever. And when he comes here now, we still laugh about that, and he says, haven't you got over that yet? And I haven't, because this was back in 2003-04 when I just needed that foot up. Through certain decisions that I've made to take on other supplierships, one was with a company called Wertec, which is an American company based in Toledo, and they make heavy duty stuff for the lift shaft to normally service the car when the ropes need, or to support the car when the ropes need to be serviced. So it's like big clamps which support the car, the lift car. And they also make a lot of ancillary products. So we went out to see them. I went out to see them to forge a friendship in Toledo in the middle of winter in 2015. But from that, they saw that I was of earnest stock, and they gave me the license to be their UK distributor and put them in the product guide that I was writing. And they were very honourable. And when Otis came to them for a door pressure gauge that they were making, they referred that inquiry to me. And Otis said, well, we don't deal with that company. And that was Wertec's chance to say, okay, well, we'll supply you. But no, they were loyal and still are, and said, well, you'll have to deal with them then. And so that brought Otis here in 2011. And it was the first chance we'd had a chance to present PEW to them. To not beat around the bush, they switched the switch, and we not only became a supplier, but we became their preferred supplier for a year to 2012, and they were very happy with the service we gave. And then it was then from 2012 to 15, 15 to 18, 18 to 21, and currently 21 to 24, which has just expired, and we've just got a new 3-year contract. So we have been Otis's preferred supplier for many years. So I would say from a company point of view, and the standards that they set and require, that's probably been the company's biggest achievement, not just to get it, but to maintain it, sustain it, and just prove that we can do this time and time again. Because they say, I can't remember what it is, but I think it's personality gets you through the door, but it's your character that keeps you there. And we've got a very good team, and I think that Otis lean on that for all of their bits and bobs every day. So I think that's the company's biggest achievement.
That's amazing.
That's coming from the fact that we were just a humble electrical wholesaler in Barking Road, not offering one lift product, to becoming Otis's preferred electrical and lift product supplier.
That is amazing. Are there, obviously the day can't be a smooth run like we've just spoken about, but what's your top challenges that you get day to day?
Yeah, a very good question. And I think challenges are different for different people. You'll speak to many business owners and they'll say sometimes the least challenging thing is actually the business itself. And it's the things that, the bits that are within the business to make the business work that are the challenging bits. And I suppose what I'm trying to say is staff issues. And it's not so much just bad staff issues, it's to make sure that the staff see things as you see them, because you still want them to think on their own. And the difference between perhaps my role, which is now as the CEO, and perhaps the difference between what I used to do, this will answer your question, by the way, and what I do now is that what I used to do when I was MD is I had to live in the present. And by that, it was dealing with everyday problems, staff issues, delivery issues, not just delivery issues from our vans, but delivery issues from recognised carriers, DPD, TNT, whatever, every day, because you're judged on those. Even things like, oh God, it's snowing today, we're not going to get any deliveries done, when your children go, oh great, we'll go and play snowballs. So as an MD, these are the present issues every day that you have to deal with. When you then become CEO, you have to live in the future, and that's the difference between the two roles.
Interesting.
The managing director, lives in the present and deals with all the present minutiae that goes on every day. The CEO lives in the future, looking at where the company's headed. He's on the bridge. He can't be in the engine room anymore. He's on the bridge, seeing where the company's headed and where new opportunity lies to help grow the business, to pay the wages and sustain the overheads. So the biggest challenge, I think, on a daily basis is to make sure that you can maintain a level of business to sustain the overheads of the business. And I think that if everyone calls that not true, then they are hugely successful. And the problem is, of course, that in our business, it's credit. We're not like Amazon, where you pay for it when you order your goods, or you go to Tesco's and you put your bananas and stuff through and you pay cash for it straight there away. And then they take the credit, but we don't. We have to pay straight away. But in this business isn't business until the money's in your bank, maybe 50 or 60 days later. So again, one of the big challenges in terms of going back to maintaining the overheads is making sure that your age debt list is low so that you've got the money to pay for the overheads. Well, and getting a big order, but it's not until the money's in the bank. So I think the biggest challenge is making sure that you can keep your head above water and see opportunities to create new opportunities and create new business to keep the overheads at bay, because the overheads ultimately are fixed. So if you can get more opportunities, then you can see your way clear past those. But that is a huge challenge, one that you can't do when you're the manager, because you're too busy doing all the day-to-day stuff, and you're blinkered to do that, as I was. But once you have your head above that and you're living in the future as the CEO, you then have time, as the people say, the out-of-body experience, to look down and say, we haven't tried that, or we could perhaps try to get into this, which was not done before. You don't have time to think about that. So the challenge is making sure that I do what I do to make sure we can maintain the overheads and all of the day-to-day stuff's being taken care of. It's a constant challenge, but everyone within this business does their job really well, which makes the whole, it's the sum of the parts, which makes us hopefully successful. As I say, service is our best product. Don't matter what I've got downstairs. Without service, we're nothing.
Well, you sound like you're doing a fantastic job. So,
Well,
keep...
it's, I hate to hear these people go, hugely successful, because then you come and get bitten on your backside. I like to think that we do what we say we're going to do. And we have been moderately successful over 37 years. We're still here. We've made a profit every year. People go, profit, you're making too much. If we don't make profit, we can't offer the service.
Well, exactly.
And if you want a great service, then we have to make good profits to offer a premium service. And I think that another saying is that service is remembered long after cost is forgotten. And that's the same for me. If I want to go out and, I don't buy expensive watches actually, but for anyone that puts a premium into what they're buying, because they value what they've got. It's in the value. It's not so much in the cost. So I'd like to think that people get good value from PEW, so much so that they see the cost as secondary. I think if they see the cost as the primary thing, then we're not offering the value for the money.
Did you know, as part of Target Lift's social initiatives within their local community, they currently sponsor 3 football teams: Milton and Falston's under-16s, Fleet Down United Girls under-18s, and Together Men Football Club, a charity football team raising awareness for men's mental health. Keep an eye on their progress on all of their social media accounts. Target Lifts are always aiming higher. What do you love most about your job?
Because I started on my own, and I know what it is like to have confidence issues in things that you're not familiar with. I like to see staff that join us very innocently and very naive, perhaps nervous, and see them grow as individuals to the point where they end up doing stuff they didn't even think they could do. So for me, one of the great things about being in PEW for 36 years, one of them is to see the staff progress and see our team grow strong and see people step out of their comfort zones. My second love is perhaps the friendships that we've made through both customers and suppliers. A lot of customers that I cold called on that were essentially strangers, 25 years later we're friends. And that will go the same for suppliers that I've also been very loyal to over the years. That's what I love most about the job. In a sense, we're all looking out for each other. And yeah, there's competition, but there's nothing wrong with still sort of being friends with your competitors. We're all trying to put food on the table. And I see everyone as a friend. Yes, we have competitors, but what I love most about the job is seeing my staff grow, and also the friendships and associations that we've established as a company, which are lifelong. Yeah. And they go above economic climates and peaks and troughs. They're always there. So I think that's what I love most about it.
What would you say the most expensive part of a lift elevator is that you can supply?
Yeah, a good question. I'm going to sort of probably just go off piste here and say the stuff that we keep, probably ranges from a few pence, probably to a few £1,000s. The big question is, in order to service the customer base, we have to have a plethora of goods. Yeah. So at any one time, we've probably got about £2 million worth of stock here. Now, out of that £2 million worth of stock, when we look at our big sellers, it could end up being an M4 screw, which we'll sell hundreds of thousands of. But when you are a distributor, people, and this is one thing that I learned early on, people do not want to get 7 or 8 out of 10 things on their shopping list. They want to get everything. So you have to have everything. But what I also wanted to do was to make sure that PEW stock quality products. So the model for me was perhaps like John Lewis. You're going to John Lewis Partnership, and you can go and get your Molten Brown or your Joe Malone or your Creed aftershave, quality clothes. They're just known for, Charlotte Tilbury maker. You can go there and get what you want because they're a house of brands. So we wanted to try to bring that analogy to the lift industry, where you can come here and you can buy your Avaya door ridges, you can get your Wertec, and we do Smersel, and the list is endless really. We do Datweiler, we do Pfeiffer Draco, we do quality makes. So, and I've probably forgotten a load anyway. But we also do quality makes from abroad, which is important. So I think that in terms of individual values, it's probably the sum of the parts. There's a couple of £1 million down there easy, but without that, we cannot service everything every day.
That makes sense.
If you want to come here and buy 5 slimline door ridges, we'll have them. We haven't got 1 or 2. We've probably got 30 or 40 downstairs. So what I've learned is that, and it's an analogy that when I first came here into this warehouse, I didn't just come here because I wouldn't have Alice. I went round to see warehouse owners to ask them just a few tips on how to stock and what to stock and what were their philosophies. And the one that sort of rang true to me was one not far from here, actually in Dagenham. And the 2 guys that ran that one said, remember that stock is king.
Yep.
People would rather be looking at it than looking for it. and you will get people that call you and say, what's your price on this? And we'll be 50 pence or a pound dearer than someone else, a competitor. And they'll say, oh, your competitor's doing it for a pound cheaper. And my question to them is, well, why are you calling me? And they'll say, well, because they haven't got it. And I'll say, well, I can be a pound cheaper when I haven't got it, but I've got it. I've got 300 of them. And so that obviously defines that they have to come here. So if you have massive stock, you can charge a premium for that because people want to get that stuff. And it goes back to, dare I say, the Amazon effect. If they haven't got, if they haven't got it in stock, well, they've got everything, but you tend to go to them because they've got everything in stock. Yep. Companies that are a bit wishy-washy and don't have stuff in stock, you might use them a few times to give them the benefit of the doubt, but essentially, your business life's a busy one. You do not have the time, and the mere saving that you make has been diluted if they haven't got it and you've lost a day's delivery time. Yeah, exactly. So it's a matter of having plenty of stock, reasonably priced, but it's here and accessible so that we can get next day deliveries done. So the individual value of stuff, it's the sum of the parts. Yeah. It's making sure that we've got enough stock to feed everybody and replenish that, obviously, so that people get everything that they ask for.
Have you seen anything unexpected along your journey so far?
Yeah, I think as we chatted about previously, I think when I look back on my career, when I was, a humble civil engineering student, I had not an inkling that I would ever be involved in the lift industry. So I think the unexpected thing is more a personal thing, and that if you'd have asked me whether I'm going to be supplying lift and escalator companies with specialised parts, I didn't even know how a lift worked. Yeah. Obviously, I went and did my homework and learned that and learned all of the component parts. But I thought that I would be involved in engineering. So I think the biggest sort of surprise for me, looking back, is that anything's possible in life. You don't have to be conformed to think, well, I did civil engineering, so I'm obviously going to be a civil engineer. Anything's possible if you can turn your hand to anything. And here I am sitting with you, supplying the lift and escalator industry, and I shouldn't really be here. I should be suffering a bit from imposter syndrome, really. But we're here. I'm not going to say that, we are good at what we do, but I'd like to leave that to the customers. I think we've made our mark, and we are one of the industry's trusted suppliers. That in itself is a big surprise for me. Yeah. Not that we're trusted, but that we're here in the first place, because there was every chance that we wouldn't have been had I not pulled up in that car park. So that's the surprise element.
I love that you've also documented your journey so far, which I think is so special, even to still have those photos.
Yeah, a lot of these photos are photos. These aren't digital photos.
Yeah, exactly. So, no editing on those.
Yeah, it's been a long ride. Going back to the surprise element, this was when I first started to work for my brother-in-law, who's here. Obviously, he's 40 years older now. And there's a young me in my mum's jumper that she knitted for me. And funnily enough, this chap still works there many moons after. So this was Gordon's Electrical Wholesalers. I had to learn the ropes and all the products.
That picture.
Yeah, and I didn't have a clue about the electrical contracting or wholesaling industry, but I set about learning. And that's the difference, I think. If there's one thing that I would say to people is that, whilst I was a civil engineering graduate, it didn't bother me that I had to take a few steps back to then come forward again.
I think that's important.
It is. And I didn't know that it was for me, but I was prepared to put my faith in Gordon that trusted me and give it a whirl. And that was taken in December 1987. So here we are.
Carl wasn't even born then.
No, and neither was my daughter that now works in this business. So that's the surprising thing.
That's a great...
I didn't even know I was going to have a daughter, So now that she works in the business is...
That's amazing. I love that.
Amazing, yeah.
So we would love to end our podcast chat today in tradition, as we normally do, and we would love to know who you'd want to be stuck in a lift with.
Again, probably not a conventional famous person, but I've always been heavily into my fitness and athletics and rowing. And back in the late 90s, early noughties, that's about right, there was an American black athlete called Michael Johnson.
Yep.
You'll see him now. He's always a commentator on the BBC panel for the Olympics or any athletics event. He was a double gold medal winner. He won the 200 and 400 metres at the 92 Barcelona Olympics and the 96 Atlanta Olympics on his home ground. When you hear him speak, having read his book, which I think is called Gold Rush, so much of it made sense to me. And it's not about whether you're good, it's about taking advantage of opportunities. And that's what we as a company do. Taking advantage of opportunities means that you might not get the crack the first time, you might not get the shout the first time, but don't just give up and go and eat cakes and get out of shape or whatever. Just stick with it and wait for your opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I can give you no better example than with Otis. I knocked on the door for 7 years. A lot of people would have given up. I've got the rejection letters from 04, 05, 06, 07, because they didn't know how good we were. That was my belief. Once they knew that, once I had the opportunity to tell them, they bit the bait and they're still with us. So Michael Johnson's was never, ever not be in a position to take advantage of an opportunity. His analogy of it was that the gold medal winner might pull up with a hamstring injury in the semi-final, and you might think you're going home with the silver, and now there's every chance that you've got a chance to take the gold. Whereas if you felt before the Olympics, well, actually, he's going to win the gold, or can't be bothered to go and just get, then you'd have been going, if only. Yeah. If only. But if only, you don't want if onlys in your life. So the reason I would love to speak to him, it would just reinforce to me what we've done, and I would very much align with his philosophies in always take advantage of opportunities, because that's where the gold is. It's not the money in your pocket, it's taking advantage of opportunities that you didn't think you were going to get, and then looking back and thinking, wow, because from that opportunity leads other opportunities. And that's how he's someone that I always, not so much look up to, because I don't think anyone should look up to anyone, because we're all on the level, but it's someone that I always take a big interest in listening to, because I think he speaks very wisely.
Amazing.
So here's my man, Michael Johnson.
Let's get him in. Let's get him in that lift.
That's right. Yeah, I don't think I can pay him enough money to be here. But, yeah.
Andrew, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for coming down to PEW.
It's been great learning your journey. Thank you.
Yeah, great stuff.
Doors closing.
I have faced almost every issue. Personally, find it very demanding to keep my team motivated.
You'll type it in and a robot comes back.
Yeah, we'll never have a robot on the telephone.
No.
The situation of finding skilled people is still a little difficult.